And he was brought on the national scene, a national hero with Israel. Then what happened? Saul started to get jealous, started to attack David. What happened? David went into hiding. David went from town to town. He was struggling. He was going through hardship. 1 Samuel chapter 21, 19, 20, 21, those chapters log what David was doing. He went to one place and he was embarrassed because he usually had a lot of men around him, an army. He was known as someone that went out and defeated the Philistines. One of the main duties of the king was to protect the safety of the country that they were over. That was King Saul's obligation. God said before that, he says, listen, I'm your king. Don't worry, I'll protect you. The people looked around, they said, man, these people over there, they have a king. These people over on this side of me, they have a king. We're at a king that we can't see. I kind of like if we would not just have prophets, priests, a king over us. God says, okay, I'll give you a king. He gave him Saul. Saul was elected. He was over them. God was good with that. But the problem was Saul started to make some mistakes. A few chapters before that, the enemy was encroaching around them, and Saul panicked and he kind of did the wrong thing. He made the wrong choices. Making right choices is important. You know that, don't you? Because our decisions, our choices are going to set the tone for how far we go. As a matter of fact, at one point there, Samuel, the prophet who anointed David, said this, said, if you would have made the right choice, things would have gone well for you. But he said, no, sorry, you're not going to be king for much longer. That's what he said. He says, listen, God will still be with you, but it's not going to last. And Saul was discouraged. Samuel said, if you would have trusted God to bring you through, I would have made your name lived on. Jesus came through the lineage of David. But he says it could have been Saul. In Jerusalem, you see David, the city of David. And that's the lineage that went down where Jesus came. Well, fast forward a little bit. What was going on is David had to get a new army. And it says the people that came and flocked to him were people in debt, discouraged, and his army was taken away from him. His army that he had, see, David was living in the palace with Saul. And now, I'm giving you this background because it helps us. We'll get to the points. Story. And what happened was David was living in the palace, going to and fro, and he was good at protecting the people of God. He did that slingshot thing, killed the number one thing, and wow, people liked him. As a matter of fact, when he went out and came in, people were cheering him. Saul kills hundreds, David kills thousands. Saul began to get a little jealous. And then Saul began to pursue him and turning inward. You got to be careful that what we're doing, and here's what Saul did. Saul started to, instead of concentrating on the Philistines, he started to deal with David. So here's what David did. David went to a city, a knob. We've talked about these at different times. He went to different cities. The city of Gath. He went to city after city kind of running. Kind of not wondering how is his life going to get back together. Would his life ever get back together? He had it all. He was in the palace. He married Saul's daughter. He had things going for him. As a matter of fact, Saul told him, hey, whoever kills this Goliath, they won't even have to pay taxes. He could do that. He was the king. He had a lot going for him. Now all of a sudden, overnight, everything fell. Overnight, the bottom fell out. And here we go, chapter 23. It's an interesting chapter. I've talked about it before, but I've been looking at it for the last few days. Here's what happened. The priests in one of the cities, Saul came, and they liked David. Everybody liked David. Like John David a little bit. I'm joking a little bit. I say to different people, nobody likes me. People like John David. He has a good personality. Joking a little bit. But people liked David. So the priests invited him in. They gave him a Goliath sword. They gave him some show bread, and they took care of him. Oh, Saul found out. You know what he did? He killed all of the priests of the land and of that city. Abiathar. Terrible thing that he did. Isn't it funny what jealousy can do? Now, why am I saying all this? We're getting to chapter 23. Here's what went on. Now, all of a sudden, someone came to David because David was on a run. David hid in a cave. Then he started gathering his life. He started rebuilding his life slowly. People came to him. He started to get back up again. It says the distress, the in debt. And he built his army with a ragtag group. God can rebuild your life if you stay with him. God can bring things back to you. Oh, he didn't have the army, the modern army, all the warfare. Here's David limping along. And here's what happened after the priest died. Someone came up to David. He was on the run, hiding out, going from town to town. He was embarrassed. You know what he did? He started to lie even. He started to say, yeah, no, me and Dave, Saul, we're getting along. And he started to make up stories because he was embarrassed. But chapter 23, there was a turn of events. You see, before that, after Samuel anointed David, the shepherd boy, he anointed him with oil and ran down. He says, you're going to be king of Israel one day. You know what David did? He went back and he started tending the sheep. Sometimes it's hard for us when there's promise and then it seems like we go backwards. But once God says something, he brings it to pass. So a lot of events took place. Then all of a sudden in chapter 23, someone told him, hey, David, the Philistines are destroying this one town down the road. They're looting it. They're taking everything away from the people. Now Saul's on the run. Now Saul was hiding from, David was hiding from Saul. Saul should have been taking care of the city, giving protection powers. But Saul was too busy fighting with David. Too busy with the stupid stuff. He wasn't doing his job. So Saul, eventually, God saw that. And he says, man, your kingdom's not going to last too long. You're supposed to be protecting the people. So what David did was David heard about it and he became distressed. Chapter 23. He heard about it, just like he stepped up to the plate with that, as a young boy, David and Goliath thing, that made him chosen. Now all of a sudden he heard about it and he says, wow. But he's limping. He's hurt. He's running. It's almost like Jesus having to deal with the Pharisees and lead. He was fighting two wars. Nehemiah building the wall and trying to just stay alive. And they're building with one hand and fighting the enemy with the other. So David knew about this. I guess I could read it. When David was told, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are looting the threshing floors. He says, man, David was told that. He inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go and attack the Philistines? The Lord answered him, go attack the Philistines and save the city. But David's men said to him, here in Judah, we're afraid. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the Philistine forces? Pastor, come on, what does this have to do with me? What are you trying to say here? Is there a central point for me this morning? Yes, there is. You see, the enemy doesn't want you to go forward. The enemy doesn't want you to go on the offense. When you're crippled, when you're fighting other battles, it's hard for you to do your job. When you're somehow barely making it and the hyenas, you seen those videos on your phone? Do they come up on yours or just mine? In Africa and all the different things, it really is. It's something. How hyenas, they go after the tiger, then lioness, and it's really, well, that's another story. It's really something. But when you're fighting and things are, and you're barely standing up, David had to make a decision. Was he going to keep fighting with Saul? Or was he going to get on with what God had for him? What am I saying? You see, the enemy wants to keep you bound up. He does. The enemy wants to keep you from what God has for you. What do you mean by that? If your addictions are plaguing your life, you're probably not going to have the future that God has for you. If you are dealing with demons within and you're never conquering them and you're allowing them to rule your life, it's possibly you're not going to find everything God has for you. So what's the devil do? Did you know that the devil's number one goal is to destroy your life? It's true. You see, the enemy, the devil, is always playing games with you in your life. And you're always fighting. You get tired, you get worn down. You're barely, you got the hyenas nipping away at you and you're trying to keep going. And the fittest, as they say in the jungle, I'm thinking of the videos now, the ones that come up. Those are the ones that make it the strongest. So that's why we're here. We're here to get strong this morning. We're here to repel the attacks on our life. Do you have attacks? You bet you do. You live in the world. I saw something on TV, Israel going through their thing. I saw something, someone said this, I didn't think it was true. Christians are the most attacked people today in the world. I don't know if it's true. I heard it was on national TV. And I think, wow, that makes sense a little bit. Well, if it's not, it continues. And it gets harder. And you feel the stress, the weight of it. You don't know where it comes from. But you're dealing with things. May I say, the enemy don't want you to be set free in your life, to be liberated, because he wants to keep you bound up with things that shackle you. But God wants to set you free. He wants to liberate your life. He wants you to do his will. So where am I going with this? 3 quick things. in going on offense. What does going on offense look like for you? What does going forward look like for you? One is David heard about the problem. You know, if you're always fighting the wrong battles, you're not going to hear right. You're not going to be infected by, as a pastor, I got to be careful. Because I could fight battles all week long. I could get on something and start painting this or, and really not doing the job. We got to be careful we're fighting the right things. See, Saul wanted to fight with David. And finally, David woke up and because someone told him something, he says, "No, whoa, I was tricked. I'm not going to fight with this. I'm going to fulfill my calling." Because on the other end of this, David became the king. That's how the story goes. Not right away, a chapter or two down the road. Saul died. Saul's the king now during this story. But what happened was, it said Saul died and his kingdom was no more. And David went to the city of David. He went there and he set up his rule. And it's lasting to this day. The city of David. So what does that mean? Going on offense. What does going into this spring look like for you? Don't get taken up with stupid things. What does fulfilling your destiny look like? Don't allow the enemy to bring you down, to wear you out to the point that you can't even see straight. Keep your eye on the prize. Why is this important? Because your life is important. Your future is important. What does going on offense look like? I know when you're hurting, you don't want to talk about this. I got it. When you're struggling, you don't want to talk about going forward. It's survival. But eventually you got to go from survival into becoming all that God has called you to be. So David heard. I'm glad that David was still in touch with the people. Saul wasn't in touch with the people. Saul knew this was going on and blew it off. And he was the king. David was a renegade hiding out, going from city to city. I know you don't like maybe history like this. I do a little bit. I like the stories. Because I apply into my life and try to make sense of them as I contemplate and think. And I hope you could do the same. So the first thing he heard of the things, you're never going to be worth much if you can't hear what God is saying to your heart. If you're consumed in yourself, Lord, forgive you. We're living in a world where it's all about me and my feelings. Forget your feelings. Who cares about your feelings? I say that gently. We need to be about what God wants us to do. And it's so easy for you and I to get off base. It's so easy because the enemy steers us. I didn't literally mean forget your feelings, forgive me. But here we go. Going on offense, what's it look like? David heard. And that's why he was called a man after God's own heart. Second thing, he inquired of the Lord. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't stay in touch with God. What do you mean? Going on offense, your future depends upon you talking to Jesus. Your future depends upon you. Are you going to stay with God or are you going to go with man? What do you mean by that? Well, David needed to get strengthened because he had a battle in front of him. You know how you're going to win the war you're in? As you get more of Jesus in your life, more of God in your life. I don't know what this is. You know, some thoughts for you and I. All I know is I don't want to live another year spinning my wheels and not doing the call of God on my life. Are you the same? Or does it not matter to you? Is it throwing it all to the wind? That's the call of the day, you know. Going on offense, what's it look like? Well, it's hearing the burdens. Hearing what impacts the heart. Why don't we have missionaries today leaving all and giving all? I know, maybe not the best. Well, when we have car payments and this and worrying about our own life, it's all about me. Oh, now I got to be quiet. But for some reason, I like David, and that's why God chose him. Let me just say this. If you decide to put God first place in your life, he'll give you everything else that you need. It's true. Or is that old-fashioned? What I'm saying, if you decide, say, God, man, I'm going to please you. I'm going to please you. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Well, he inquired of the Lord. You know, before this, when David was running, he didn't inquire of the Lord. You know what he did? He had someone else inquire of the Lord. Later, he did it again, the ephod. But now, he started to talk to God face to face. And he inquired. All I know is that's where the power's at. You want strength? You got to get God in our life. And the enemy is going to do everything that he can do to keep God away from you. If you're fighting internally and all these things, less of God. The more you're pursuing, the more you're equipped for the battle. Okay, I'm getting done. David's men said to him, here in Judah, we're afraid. I don't know. Sometimes fear has a way of gripping us. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the different things. And you know what? Fear captivated their hearts. And here's what this story is all about. This story is about David getting back in the game. He was going from town to town. And what I'm saying to you is spring is upon us. Good weather. And here's my thought, my final thought. Don't let the enemy keep you from God working in your life, doing things, or is the enemy going to keep you from running and about the things that don't matter? And then eventually you're consumed with things that are not helping you. All I know is I don't want to be distracted. I don't think you want to go into the summer. God has a good summer for you. He does. God has a good summer. He has, man, you've never been where God is leading you. What I'm saying here, going on offense, you got to hear from God and you got to somehow, you can't allow fear to rule your life. What I see, and I am done, give me 2 extra minutes here. What I'm seeing, you know where Saul messed up and he lost it all? He started making bad decisions. He did. Here's the story right before this. Saul was encircled and he got scared. And what he did is he was waiting for Samuel to come and help him. Samuel was the prophet. Saul was the king. Divided government. And what happened was Saul made bad decisions and he lost it all. I don't know. Did you know that your choices are going to be the very thing that determines where you go in this life? What I'm saying, making good decisions is important. It says here, right here, Samuel said this, you acted foolishly. Your kingdom will not endure. Telling to Saul. And that's now when he starts to attack. What I'm saying here is be careful with your choices, your decisions. What Saul started to do, Saul started to see that his men were running away. Saul was fighting the Philistines and his men were running away and he only had a few left. And you know what he did? He started to panic. Don't panic. Well, my future's getting away from me. Don't panic. The enemy wants to get you to panic where you do stupid things. You know, I remember the first church we built years ago. 35, I don't know, 37 years ago. You know, we built it by scratch. Literally, this one was here. We just did a lot of refurbishing. This one, we literally dug the basement, 48 by 100. Laid the footings. Big job. And I was 22, 3, I don't know, 22, 3. But I remember we got it built and, you know, I paid for the cement on credit cards, paid for the wood, sent someone down, go buy 100 2x4s. Bought it at, what's that 8, lumber 8, they went out of business. And, but I remember dealing with this and then after we got it all built, you know, I started getting discouraged. I panicked. I made some decisions. As I look back now, being older, I kind of wish I would have weathered the storm a little better. We got it built and it was good. We were thankful, but there were struggles. And then I was thinking, I can't do all this alone and keeping up the building, and I just got discouraged. I was younger. And if I look back now, if I would have thought it through a little bit. As a matter of fact, we had a donut shop. True. That's how we funded a lot of it. Bakery background. I am done. 1.5 minutes. And I sold the donut shop. Got a pile of cash to help finance this. There was a rich person, a Jewish guy. I don't say that disrespectfully. He owned the shopping center. You know what he said to me? You're stupid. Why'd you do that? Why didn't you just do it this way? He didn't quite say stupid, but I knew in layman's terms. He goes, if you would have did it this way, you could have done this. And you know what I did? I panicked a little bit and I did it that way. We learn from our mistakes. He said, you could have done this and this and it would have been better. It was a good donut shop. We were making money. What am I saying? As I look back now, I made some choices that out of being panicking, some decisions that weren't the best for me. Does God work all things out? Sure he does. But as I look back now, I could have done it a little differently. Today, right? If you've seen everything under the world, you start to make a little, hopefully, better choices. Now, if something goes wrong in the church, I try not to panic as much. If I hear about someone else's life, I says, no, you don't got to worry. Don't let the devil scare you like that. You got to weather the storm. What am I saying? David became that person. And he guided Israel because God was with them. I remember I had this, and this is my last story. I remember we had some cash we needed to put to work because we wanted to live off the interest to pay the bills around here. I think we had probably 20 people just starting up the church. And I remember I went to invest it somewhere. They said, oh, you'll get a 10% return. Oh, that's good. But you know, I never showed up for the closing. Something said to me. A month later, the whole thing went bankrupt. I would have lost everything. Now, why am I saying that? I say that in conclusion. Because choices, decisions. David sought the Lord. He inquired of the Lord, and God helped him, spoke to him, and God was with him. What I'm saying is, in your future, you're going to have decisions to make, going into the spring, going into the summer. Don't make the wrong choices out of panicking. Don't make the wrong choices because you're scared. Don't make decisions. As a matter of fact, you should never make decisions after 9 o'clock at night. Don't be like me. Be smart and don't make it on a whim. You'll come to regret it. What I'm saying here, David was led by God. He heard the call. He inquired of the Lord. And he was getting talked out, and God helped him. Why am I saying all these things? I don't know. Because the scriptures teach us on how to conduct our lives. You have something good right before you. You got the spring. You got the summer. You're going to go into the fall. You need to hear from God. You need God to help you. You need God to fight your battles. You need God to go before you. You need God to look upon you not like Saul, but like David. And though things are hard, God will see you through. I don't know. Going on offense, making those good decisions are important. Father, help us, we pray. Pray there's some thoughts that we can nibble on. Direct us. Lord, I pray that you would work in our lives, that you would help us. I pray, God, that you would help us to make wise decisions, that you would help us to go on offense and to become all you called us to be. For we love you. Let's say this together. Dear Jesus, I love you. I need you. Come into my life. I make you my Lord